Hello students, in this video we will discuss about in detail an essay by Gayatri Spivak, the Can the Subaltern Speak. So this is the detailed video, and previous video we just discussed about the small topic about subaltern. So let's get started. So first we will know about who is Spivak. She is a post-colonial theorist, translated Derrida's of grammatology, and she has theoretical approach, means blend of feminist studies, deconstruction, post-colonialism, and Marxism. And she made a contribution to contemporary cultural studies and critical theories, challenges the idea of Marxism and post-Marxism in post-structuralism and feminism. So the Subaltern Speak, first published in the journal Wedge in 1985 and reprinted in the collection of Marxism and the Interpretation of Culture in 1988. And the detailed analysis of conversation between the post-structuralism philosopher Michael Foucault and Gilles Deleuze. She speaks about the harm done to poor women and non-Europeans by the privileged West, and she writes against the epistemic violence done by the discourse of knowledge, and she borrowed from Gramsci's idea of subalternity. So the key terms are hegemony. In this essay, hegemonic power or dominant discourse is predominantly that of a white male. And second one is equivocation. Spivak is suggesting that we have to be sure in the theoretical rigor of our use of terms. We need to avoid using terms that have multiple meanings. So she wants us to avoid equivocation. Another term is subjectivity. Foucault and Deleuze ascribe to the post-structuralist traditional model that belief, desire, interest, and intent are all united and all the same in the formation of subject. So they conflate the terms. However, Spivak argues for Crecia and Marxist subjectivity, which is in the antithesis of the Foucault and Deleuze. And she believes that desires and interests are not the same. And she suggests subjectivity doesn't come from the unity but dislocation. So the subaltern in post-colonial term designates the colonized Moors who are socially, politically, and geographically excluded from the hierarchy of power. For Spivak, the subaltern are those who belongs to the third world country. Subaltern is the that identity that has no possibility at social mobility, no possibility to speak and to be heard, intransibility of the subaltern's structural position, and who are subject to the hegemony of the dominant class. So, according to her intellectuals and power, conversation between Michael Foucault and Gilles Desol, it appears in the Michael Foucault language, counter memory and practice. So, Spivak interest in the conversation, he problematized the function of the post-colonial intellectual and connect these two, like the radical claim of 20th century French intellectual Michael and Gilles to speak for the disenfranchised, and the self-righteous claims of British colonialism to rescue native women from Hindu widow sacrifice, and thus propagates the limit of French post-structuralist theory, Lacan, Guattari, and Deleuze, and she uses the tool of deconstruction. So she Spivak's criticism of both Deleuze is trapped in his unconscious Eurocentrism, and Foucault and Deleuze favor micrological structure of resistance, which are basically determined by local conflict. Spivak rejects the post-structuralist micrological determinations and argues that micrological forms of resistance must not be used to eliminate the larger macrological configurations of power. So she strategies that one of the first to articulate post-colonial theory through a deconstructive lens, and she dismantled the tradition of Western thought that has provided the justification of European colonialism and new colonialism, and argued that the development of Western philosophy is connected to the history European imperial expansion from 19th century British to 20th century American policy making. So, Foucault and Deleuze discuss the link between the struggle of women, homosexual prisoners, etc., to the struggle and the relationship between theory, practice, and power. So, these are the statements that Deleuze has means stated that he is in the process of experiencing a new relationship between the theory and practice, and to create condition of the prisoner to speak, those to act, struggle, and not represented by any group or nation, and the right to represent the conscious is appropriate by the group, and theorizing intellectual is not the representative consciousness. This is the statement of Foucault, the political involvement of the intellectual and the intellectual who speak the truth. These are some points mentioned by him, and rather some more points like the intellectual that discovered and the system of power which blocks, prohibits, and invalidates this discourse. The theory of deluge, again, in terms of reforms, that reforms are designed by people who claims to be representative and arise from the complaints and demands. So it is the reform but revolutionary action that questions the totality of power. Again, some points that Foucault and Deleuze has mentioned against the power and the prisoners of the global vision, like the counter discourse of prisoners and not a theory about delinquency. All the current forms of repression are totalized forms to the point of view of power. These are some separate points within these two. And then some more points of Foucault and Deleuze in reference to power. Power is exercised by men in order to maintain the capitalist exploitation. You can write in these points in the key points. She has also mentioned the Guha idea that Mann nevertheless insists that the colonized subaltern's subject is irretrievably heterogeneous. So she has mentioned some Guha points also. Like Guha construct the definition for the people that can be only identity indifferential. Mention the third group on the list as the buffer group, as it is between the people and the great microstructural dominant group, dominant foreign group and dominant indigenous group. Means both are elite groups. Beyond post-colonialism, Spivak is considered a leading critic. So she revised her argument to refuse identification by any single category label such as these. So she committed to rethinking and revising. Such thing means in social, economic, and political changes and backgrounds. So often criticized for in this criticism is based on the assumption that post-structuralist theory is a product of European philosophy and culture. So these are some more points of deconstruction that has Spivak, Derrida, and Foucault provided. Post-structuralism, very existence of the body knowledge is debated. Some define post-structuralism as human being and the world and the practice of reproducing meaning. So these are some more points on. Others argues that there is no clear definition. And post-structuralism sought to explain successful decolonization. Hegemonic power want to increase influence and power and decrease resistance and want to create block between themselves and the proletariat. Ideology controls the population by pacifying and making them to quiet, creating a false consciousness. So these are the some points for ideology for Marx. Post-structuralists criticize Marxism by reject false consciousness in their argument. There is no such thing as group collective consciousness. Global consciousness is even more impossible. And how is the speaking subject being produced? So this is the chart that a savior manager and brown woman. So a saving brown woman is also a structural necessity. The motive for representation is summarized by these points. Elaboration of civic sentence demonstrates the woman as a subject. Subaltern identity and the agency. The new subaltern identity. So she argues these are some point of her argument. These are the main key points.